Coming up on This Week in Space, Ukraine destroys a giant vintage radio telescope. Is China really pulling ahead in the race in space? And it's Rod's birthday, so let's sing. But more importantly, Terry Virts, former astronaut and Senate candidate for Texas, is going to join us to explain all of that and more, so tune in.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 178, recorded on September 19th, 2025. Tell it to the mountain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the Tell It to the Mountain edition. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Badaster Magazine, and I'm with my good pal, Tarek Malik, editor-in-chief for Space.com and fairy den godmother or something.
Hey, hello, Rod. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and you're about to take off to take your daughter to Girl Scout camp, you lucky fellow.
Well, yeah. Hey, can I say something really quick?
Do I have a choice?
Well, my name is Tarek, and I'm here to say happy birthday, Rod, in a major way. He's got mad skills when it comes to space, and he's going to share it with us all over the place. Happy birthday, Rod. It's Rod's birthday, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, my God, I'm blushing. That's way better than the AI one I did for you last time. Huh? Woo!
Happy birthday, Rod.
Thank you. I got to put that.
I wrote it myself. So
happy birthday. And what do we decide? I'm 2 years older than your dad?
No.
Or something?
No.
Or
my dad is a lot older than you are, Rod.
Okay. That was somebody else. That was some other co-host I was talking to. And in just a few minutes.
Rod is 25, everybody. You look great, Rod. You look great.
I'm 25 times 3. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by former astronaut and U.S. Senate candidate for the great state of Texas, Colonel Terry Virts. So go nowhere because this is going to be a good one. Before we do, of course, please don't forget to do us a solid and make sure to like, subscribe, and all the other podcast activities you do to let people know you love them, because we need your love and we love you. And now, another attempt at humor by loyal listener Trey Harmon, who's joking last week. Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
Why won't the colonists on Mars need to worry about food to eat?
I don't know. Why?
Because of all the sandwiches there.
Ha ha ha.
Pretty clever, huh?
I got it. Yeah.
But wait.
I like it.
There's more, said the Ginsu knife salesman. Here's one from Andrew Logan. Hey,
Andrew.
Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
Why were the Enterprise's engines powered by antimatter?
I don't know. Why?
Because Uncle Matter was off taking a nap. Yeah.
I saw that email, Andrew, and I thought it was really funny when I opened it.
I did too. And I probably said it right. I should have said antimatter.
Yeah.
But there you go. Now, I have heard that some people want to see us spontaneously annihilate when it's joke time in this show, but you can help by sending your best, worst, or most indifferent space joke to us at twit@twit.tv, just like those people did. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And now, I just said that, on to headline news.
Headline news.
Craig, Newmark. So Ukraine attacked a giant radio telescope that was used for cross purposes by the Russian military. What's the story there?
Yeah, this is a good one. This was a surprise story by, actually at space.com by one of our contributors, Teresa Poltarova, who found out that last month Ukraine attacked the RT-70 radio telescope in Crimea, which, if that's not familiar to anyone, it was used by Russia for missions to Venus to transmit messages to potential alien life across the cosmos. It had a role to play in space exploration, and Ukraine actually destroyed it last month because Russia was using it for military communications. So it's another bit of space history that has kind of fallen to this conflict. And if folks don't recall, the Tupolev carrier plane for the Buran spacecraft, which was built in Ukraine and was housed there, was destroyed very early on in the war, and then along with a lot of space industry for the Zenit rockets, etc. But this was just like another bit of technology that had been gone because, for folks that don't recall, when Russia kind of annexed the Crimean Peninsula, it carried a bunch of upgrades on this structure. It's a 5,000 metric tons, how large it is. It's a very large telescope, and to upgrade it for military communications. And so, they decided it was too useful for Russia to let it standing. And I guess we got some video of them actually attacking it with drones.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this. This is pretty dramatic.
I hadn't seen the video myself either. I knew that they had done it, but they took out, looks like the whole facility there. So.
Boy, drones have changed the way war does business, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's a little chilling. And as we don't need to tell our loyal listeners, China is pulling ahead, but in a new way.
Yeah, that's right. This is from Eric Berger over at Ars Technica, who was writing about a new report that came out of the Commercial Spaceflight Federation that basically says that China's advances in spaceflight across the board. We've got human spaceflight. They've got their own space station. We've got missions to Mars, to the moon. They've got plans for their own crewed moon landings, as well as, and you can see it in the image there at the top, plans for Starship-esque types of fully reusable rockets that if the United States does not, really step up its game in the aerospace market, that in the next 5-10 years, that they will cede the ground. So this space race kind of that you've been hearing politicians really talk about, this report really says, look, it's not just a political tool to try to rally support. It is a technology. I'm a technology gap. Oh my gosh! It is a technological gap that is widening or that is closing right now, so that they will still be on par with U.S. industry and if depending on what we do in the next 5-10 years, surpass it. So.
Well, and at the rate that they vacuum up intellectual property from the West and then repurpose it to their own ends. Now, I haven't been to a spaceflight museum in China for about 7 years, but I'll be going back there soon. And if I get a chance, I'll have to swing by and see if I'm basically looking at a display of SpaceX and NASA rockets with red flags and yellow stars on them. The last time I was there, I've told this story before, but my favorite moment was looking at their display of scale models of rockets where the Long March 5 and the Saturn V were scaled so they were exactly the same height, which is a little off.
Well, now they've got the Long March 6, which is like their moon rocket equivalent. So,
and the 10, right?
Your 10, 10, pardon me. Yeah.
But it's a moon rocket, but it ain't no Saturn V.
No,
it's still pretty puny.
Few can be, right?
Where they got to do 2 launches. All right. Stunning black hole imagery.
Yeah.
Tell us all.
Well, I wanted to get a science story in here, and this was one that really took off for us by my colleague, Rob Lee. You might recall a few years ago, we got our very first actual picture of a black hole by the Event Horizon Telescope. And that was the black hole, the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy M87 back in April of 2019. Well, now we've got new and better images of the black hole where we can actually see some weird stuff, things like the magnetic fields. The polarization of the magnetic fields reversing over the last 4 years, and other times of jets and stuff emerging for it. So these are just new and better images of the black hole, more refined. So before it was a bit of a kind of a smudge. Now in space, now we can actually see some of the magnetic lines. We can see a lot of the effects about it, and there are images that over time will only get better of an object that at one point they called it unknowable because it was such a dense and gravitationally heavy type of object that we couldn't get any light from it at all. So, right. It's just a huge achievement that they not only were able to photograph this thing in the first place, but also just keep refining it over and over again. And it will be very interesting to see how this Event Horizon Telescope technology does change over time if they do get more installations, which they've been working on to get more little points, because this telescope is spread out all around the planet basically, and they look at this one spot from these different places to create such a large image. So
it's actually a number of telescopes there.
Yeah, there's
observations.
I think there's 2, if not 3, and they want to add some more to get better, more refined observations, so they can keep looking at the same spot over and over again to really pinpoint it down. So
All right, and finally, you have a story on here about a solar eclipse on Sunday, which will be viewed mainly by
Penguins. That's right.
penguins.
That's right. This is just a reminder, everyone, that the equinox eclipse is coming up on September 21st. We will have coverage at space.com. But if you're in Australia, the South Pacific, the South Atlantic, even in Antarctica, you'll be able to see up to 86% coverage of the sun by the moon as it kind of toe dips across the disk as seen from Earth. Not a total solar eclipse. We're not going to have another one of those until I believe August of 2026, and that's for Iceland and parts of Spain and Europe. But this is the last eclipse of 2026, moon or sun or otherwise.
25.
Of 2025. What year did I say? 2026? Yeah, 25. 2025. It's the last eclipse of the year, everybody. So it's 2025 right now. So
When is the one? There's a total eclipse happening in Egypt soon, isn't there?
that is in 2027. And not only is it happening in Egypt, but it's going to be flying over, the valley. It's going to be passing over the Valley of the Kings. So that's going to be really exciting for just the sight of a total solar eclipse over the Great Pyramids. And it's going to be one of the longest solar eclipse totalities in memory. And really, really long, 7+ minutes, I think is what they're saying.
So
I could be wrong, but I know
who
it's
can we
really
get
long.
to pay for us to go?
Well, I don't know, man. I'm taking applications, everybody. So
For financial support, you mean?
Exactly. But there will be a really large competition, I think, at space.com for who gets to go to that. So
Are you going to send somebody?
well, if we can get the coverage arranged, we'll see. So we've got people going to Iceland, yeah, and maybe Spain.
It always surprises me because I guess you need that first-hand account. My first-hand account of the last eclipse was clouds. Oh, they're clearing clouds.
That's
the
the risk.
Coming, totality. Oh, clouds.
That's the risk.
right.
My colleague is going to Spain, I think, as vacation for it, like along the coast. And I thought that was great that he's going to watch the eclipse from the coast of Spain because, as we know, the rains in Spain fall mainly on the plains. And so he'll be all right, and the weather will be great for that. So,
All right. We will be back shortly with Colonel Terry Virts, astronaut and Senate candidate. So strap into your ejection seats and go nowhere. And we are back with Terry Virts, our favorite astronaut of the week. How are you today, sir?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
We're very glad to have you. So we would love to get kind of a capsule summary. I mean, the exciting news is that you're running for the Senate, which is great because we need space people in positions of some political authority and influence. But would you mind giving us just a kind of a backgrounder on who you are and what you've done? Because it's a long resume and it's hard for me to pick out the really important stuff.
Sure. Well, I joke, Arizona has Mark Kelly. And I talked to him about this. So Texas can't go without an astronaut senator if Arizona has one. So my basic background, I was an Air Force pilot, F-16 pilot, became a test pilot out at Edwards Air Force Base, home of the right stuff, and came to NASA as a space shuttle pilot at first. I flew on STS-130 as the pilot of Endeavour. We actually finished building the ISS. Then I went back a few years later, flew with the Russians on a Soyuz capsule, and ended up being the commander of the International Space Station. And overall, I spent a little over 7 months in space. Since I got back to Earth, I've written a few books, worked on a few film and TV projects. And for the last 4 years, really, I've been working in the energy industry as a consultant doing energy transition work. So kind of a diverse background. And as I looked out at the country and I saw the things that were going on, like right now, we're losing our First Amendment, for example. I just couldn't stand by and watch this happen and just, be mad at Twitter for another cycle. So I decided to throw my name in the hat and run for U.S. Senate here in Texas. And I think I'm running as a Democrat. And I think the background that I have as a fighter pilot and astronaut is the kind of background that can actually win here in Texas. Democrats haven't won here in over 30 years. And so that was my decision. I joke that people are like, Terry, you have a great life. Why the heck are you getting into politics? And my joke is I lost a bet. But the reality is, I care about the Constitution too much. Spent 30 years in the Air Force to support and defend the Constitution. And I can't sit by and watch it be destroyed. So that's why I'm in this race.
Well, it's very common for people to say to folks that have done what you've done, thank you for your service, but I suspect your service so far has been nothing compared to what you're about to face. So hats off to you for this endeavor. A question, which I ask people that have flown in the Soyuz, we see pictures of the shuttle main deck and mid deck and so forth.
Right.
And, they're kind of taken with a slight wide angle lens. Every time I see a picture of a Soyuz, it's taken with damn near a fisheye because I think it's really small. Is that really as cramped as it looks with all that stuff packed in there?
The Soyuz is even more cramped than you think. It's like, I'm trying to picture it, like you're wedged in with your buddies. You can't stretch your knees out because the capsule's not that big. And then right before you land, the seat actually goes up. It's called stroking. It raises up like a foot. So the cockpit is kind of here, and then all of a sudden it's there, right in your face. And I'm not a claustrophobic person. Like, astronaut's a bad career if you are.
Yes.
But the one time in my life, right before we touched down in Kazakhstan, when we did that stroking, like I was in the right seat, so my arm was smashed against the wall. And I remember thinking, okay, I can either panic, in which case I'll be strapped in, unable to move, unable to do anything about it, or I can just sit here and be calm and be unable to move. And so I actually had to consciously go, I'm not going to be panicked, because you're in the spacesuit, which is constricting. But yes, long answer to your question, the Soyuz is small. The Soyuz is small.
Well, we have a number of questions, both about your spaceflight experience as well as your Senate bid coming up. But I have a bit of a traditional question for all of our guests, just to kind of ask where or when their spark of interest in space really began. I'm curious. Was it an outgrowth of your experience? As a test pilot with the Air Force? Was it something that was before that in school or college or something?
So the first book that I can remember reading, I was maybe pre-kindergarten. It was a cardboard book with like one line per page. And it was about space. It was about Apollo. And I remember thinking as a little kid, man, I want to do that. Like, those astronauts went to the moon. I want to do that. So as I grew up, I had pictures I had an M31, the Andromeda Galaxy picture. I had the M42 Orion Nebula picture right above my bed. I had the old all-white Columbia Space Shuttle picture. Mm-hmm. And I had a YF-16, the original red, white, and blue F-16. I had all those posters on my wall when I was a boy. And I very, very, very lucky. I actually got to do the things that I wanted to do when I was a kid. So that desire started very early.
Oh, wow. That's great. So, but you flew in space, like you mentioned, STS-130 expedition, 42 and 43.
42
right?
and 43.
Yeah. And now you're running for Senate in Texas, and you kind of touched on it a bit about like your thoughts for doing that. But I mean, that seems like a big decision for someone that's already had kind of a life of service like yourself to decide, I think I've got a lot more to give. I'm going to jump into this. Can you kind of walk us through that decision? You touched on it a bit, but just, why now, I guess? So.
Yeah. If things were normal, if it was just, the 90s or the 2000s and it was just kind of normal life, I would definitely not be doing this. If there was a candidate I thought who could win as a Democrat in Texas, I would just support them. In the last race, I supported a guy named Colin Allred. He just lost to Ted Cruz by almost 10 points. I don't think there's a Democrat who can win in Texas. We haven't won in over 30 years. Ann Richards was governor. Pearl Jam was at the top of the charts the last time a Democrat won here in Texas. Boy. And, I've been traveling the state. In the last couple of weeks, I've been in Midland. Last night, I drove to Fort Worth to do an event and drove back to Houston last night alone. I've been in Austin, San Antonio. We're down in the Rio Grande Valley. We're going back there next week. So it's a big state, by the way, Texas is. I see a real threat to the Constitution. Our First Amendment is under direct attack. I mean, ABC and CBS have basically canceled the First Amendment. They're not allowing their on-air talent to say basic things that they should be allowed to say. And that's a huge threat. And like I said, when I was 17 years old, I went to the Air Force Academy. As a kid, as a teenager, I was an exchange student in Finland. I lived on the border of the Soviet Union back in 1984 with a Finnish family. So I saw the Soviet Union up front, and I saw how things worked. And I joined the Air Force when I was 17 to defend Europe from the Russians, basically, and raised my right hand, swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And what I see right now is very much not normal. And that's why I joined the race.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you thought was the biggest challenge, but it sounds like it's kind of like all of it is the biggest challenge right now. Or is there like really like is there like a linchpin? I guess I'm trying to think of a different word than challenge. Rod, help me out. A linchpin
For me,
a target for you that you really want to hone in on to fix, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so the things that I want to do, I kind of put them in three buckets. I want to focus on the future. I want to have hope. Everything that we hear is just anger and depression and this terrible tragedy is happening. So I want to focus on the future. I think we need to fix our democracy. I think things like gerrymandering, the disaster that Texas just had here. We need term limits. We need to get the presidential powers and the executive branch back under control. We need to get money out of politics. Trust me, as a Senate candidate, the money situation is, I know things now that I never wanted to know.
Dear.
It is a mess. So democracy is one of my buckets. The big focus I have is on strengthening the middle class. I think the Democratic Party has lost its way. I'm calling for new leadership. We need to get back to focusing on economic issues, on education. I'm a product of public school. We need to strengthen public schools. We need to get healthcare costs down. I just had this blue light treatment on my face. The bad news is it looks awful today. The good news is next week I should look 10 years younger. So that's what they tell me. But the cost.
Well, and let's not forget that was because of all the time you spent in space serving your country.
After both of my space flights, I did get skin cancer. So you never know what it's caused it. But being like above the magnetic field, getting galactic cosmic radiation is probably not the best thing. So democracy, middle class issues, and then human rights. Human rights are very important to me. Things like protecting LGBT rights, things like not having masked men dressed up like Navy SEALs, yanking people off the streets of Houston.
Yeah.
Things like women having rights. I mean, I live in Texas. It's the Handmaid's Tale here with a guy named Ken Paxton, who's our attorney general, who's likely to be my opponent. So democracy, middle class, and human rights, those are that's how I want to focus on the future as a senator.
And I guess, I think we're going to go to a break, right?
Yeah, we're going to run to
quick.
a break real quick. So let's pivot to a break, and we'll be right back. Before you know it, go nowhere.
Good. Well, I had like another question, because it sounds like as an astronaut, also as a colonel in the Air Force. I mean, you've been around a lot of the country, let alone the world. I guess the entire planet. Come to think of it.
True.
But I'm curious how that career, both in the military and as an astronaut, have prepared you for a Senate role there, because I assume that you would have seen a lot of the country, a lot of different folks and whatnot, and heard from a lot of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my life experience is very unique. I think it's prepared me perfectly for the job of senator. So first of all, I've lived around the world. I spent a year in Korea defending South Korea from North Korea, flying F-16s there. I've lived in several countries in Europe. I've lived basically in Russia off and on for a decade. I got 45 combat missions flying in the Middle East. So that international experience is very important. The job of a senator includes national security and international relations. It's very important for a state like Texas, where we do $900 billion in imports and exports. $900 billion a year in trade is massive. And so the senator from Texas should understand those things. Just meeting people and talking with people. I do guest lecturing at several universities, teaching risk and about the space shuttle accidents that we had. So I talk to international business people all the time, and that gives me a really unique perspective. I've spoken in probably hundreds of schools, and I'm passionate about education. So that gives me a unique perspective. So I have this really weird career of I've done all these different things, but I think it's prepared me perfectly for the job of United States Senator.
Tark, do you have another?
No, that was great. That was great. That was my main one.
I guess it's inevitable that I pivot to this, but when you get into this new position, which we're all sure you're going to, of the levers you can pull once in government, which NASA lever do you pull? I mean, we're in a very odd place here now with the space agency. We're looking at possibly the lowest budget since the 60s in terms of real numbers, spendable money. We're looking at massive cutbacks on robotic space flight. We're looking at some kind of head-scratching adjustments on the human spaceflight side. So there's a lot going on. And then at the same time, we have what appears to be China running away with a very Apollo 11-like mission while we're still kind of trying to get our shoelaces untied, if you'll excuse me for using that image, on Artemis 3, on getting our return to the moon done. It's a really big topic, so kind of jump in anywhere you see fit. But what do we do about this?
Sure. So I've got 4 priorities that I would have for NASA. Number one, I'd restore space science. In the military, they have this concept of reinforcing success. Like if you've got a big front line and some units are struggling and then somebody breaks through, you put your reserves where you're having success. And I think NASA's biggest success for several decades has been in space science and these probes, the rovers on Mars, probes going to Jupiter and Saturn and beyond Pluto. We need to strengthen those. This insane Trump budget is going to cancel like over a dozen missions that are working, like Juno, for example, or New Horizons. All the money has been spent. They just need a few $1 million to keep a few engineers working on it. And they want to cancel those things, which is insane. So I think we need to strengthen our space science. We need to protect Earth science. This administration's goal is to cancel Earth science. I just heard 2 days ago that they may want to shut down NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So there's a whole list of Earth observation satellites that are looking at the oceans and the atmospheres and land use. We have to protect those because understanding what's happening on Earth is probably the most important thing that comes from our space. I think we need to accelerate the CLDP program, the commercial space station program. Some of the things that is in the Trump budget delays it. And there's maybe 5 or so companies working on private space stations. They can't just do this forever. They can't just do equity raises, go to the VC market or the private equity market and try and raise capital. They need to get a contract or they need to not get a contract and be done, right? And so stringing them on is very inefficient. It doesn't work for the business model. So I think we need to accelerate that. But the biggest thing, and I want to talk about Artemis, I want to tell you a story first. I was in Corsica, France. It's a little island in the Mediterranean. I flew an F-16 there. I was an F-16 pilot at the time, and I speak French. I went to the.
You minored in French, right?
Yeah, I did. I went to the French Air Force Academy for an exchange. So this little old guy comes up to me, and we have this. Was that the American? He's like, "You're American. You landed on the moon." And in that moment, the light bulb went off in my head that, man, the moon landing mattered. This peasant in the Mediterranean island, the one thing he knew about America was the moon landing. If China beats us back to the moon, it is a disaster for humanity because all of humanity will look and go, well, America was a great 20th century power. China's the future. Yeah, they're authoritarian. Yeah, the Chinese Communist Party is a surveillance state, but they're the future. They're the ones succeeding and America's not. And the Artemis program needs a complete revamp. It needs a bottom-up review. This program was born in 2004. George W. Bush gave his vision for space exploration speech after the Columbia accident. It was originally called Constellation. Obama tried to kill it. Congress wouldn't let that happen, and it got renamed to Artemis. It's the same. Ares 5 became SLS. Orion is still around. We have been spinning our wheels for over 20 years. We haven't even launched humans yet on this capsule. I watched the first Orion capsule on board the space station. I was on the ISS. We watched it on a laptop launch on the Delta rocket. This program is taking way too long. The lunar lander, the SpaceX lunar lander, the
human landing system,
is the HLS. Yeah, it's too big. The people I've talked to at NASA are like, this thing is ridiculous. from what I've been told by engineers, if it has 1.5 degrees of tilt, it falls over. While it's landing, if there's any horizontal drift, it falls over and kills everybody. It's like 100 feet tall. It's this huge thing. The last number I've heard different numbers. The latest number I've heard is it requires 12 Starship launches full of fuel.
Oh,
Only 12. Rod, only 12.
There you go. You guys have a break.
I don't know how recent that was. Last I heard,
Yeah.
they were ranging 16 to 24. And that's a lot of ground choreography for launches.
I was the SLS guy in 2011.
Right.
Astronaut. I was the astronaut assigned to the SLS.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
2011.
Yeah, and
years
and,
ago.
and for our listeners,
It still hasn't launched. It launched unmanned, but it still hasn't launched with astronauts yet.
yeah, I was going to say for our listeners to put it in perspective, Terry, when you were in space watching that first Orion flight, exploration flight test 1, that was December 5th of 2014, over 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and since then we had the
Clark was still using the pacifier then.
We were on Blackberries. We watched it on our Blackberry.
Yeah.
But and then we waited until 2022 for Artemis 1, uncrewed, actually on SLS. And so Rod and I's opinion on the pace is well documented, right, Rod?
Well, I was going to mention that again, if I might, for just a second. So as everybody who listens knows, because I bore them with this all the time, I'm currently working on a book from the space race era. It's like, I don't know, the 7th one I've written about that era or something. So I'm going through the Apollo program again, and I'm looking at these numbers and these timelines again. And it is so painful to see the Saturn V basically arisen from the dust of something unmade in about 5 years, if you don't include the development of the F1 engine, which is a little longer. The whole program was roughly 8 years, 7.5
We went
years.
from Alan Shepard to Neil and Buzz in 8.5 years.
Alan Shepard's 15 minutes of suborbital flight. Yeah. Now, admittedly, they had a lot more money at their command than this program does. But the rate things are going, you were part of the SLS program for, well, I shouldn't paint you with that. You were embedded with the SLS program for some period of time as the astronaut, looking at it, scratching your head, going, probably. And by the time this is all done, those numbers will, of course, go up. But I did want to ask, at its very core, on the one hand, the SLS is monikered as the Senate launch system, and we've got lots of reasons to dislike it. On the other hand, it's the moon rocket we have right now that we could use for the first few flights, because it does seem to work.
It did work.
On the third hand, though, we have people laying out designs for programs that would use things like the Falcon Heavy and the New Glenn as an alternative launch system with the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous and so forth. What do you think about all this?
So I think a lot about a lot of that. One of the most important lessons from Columbia, I was a family escort for the STS-107 mission. Those are 7 of my friends that got killed in that mission. The most important lesson from that was separate crew from cargo. And when Obama canceled Constellation and started this new program, they took the Orion capsule and put it back on the cargo rocket without anybody saying a word. I was an astronaut. I wasn't allowed to speak up at the time. It appalled me. Here's what I would do. And I think we need a serious review of the program. If the Apollo 1 fire had not happened in 1961 and they didn't have that revamping of the Apollo program, we never would have made it to the moon by 1969. We need that type of moment without, the tragedy that was Apollo 1. They need to separate crew from cargo. They need to get Orion off of the SLS. If that means launching it on a Falcon Heavy, that's what that means. If it means getting the Boeing capsule or the SpaceX Dragon capsule lunar certified, that's what that means. Maybe New Glenn, maybe Vulcan, whatever. We need to get crew off of cargo. Use the SLS rocket. To your point, you go to war with the army you have, and the army we have is SLS works. We have an N of 1 showing it works. Starship, a little more iffy. I hope it works eventually. We'll see. And you can use that SLS to launch a smaller, more sane lunar lander, 1 SLS mission, 1 lunar lander with a transfer, vehicle. And then you launch the crew on a separate rocket. So 2 missions, 2 launches is all that's required. And then you can send crew to the moon. We don't need to worry about Gateway. That's just money and time and distraction. We need to get astronauts. We need to be able to use the moon, I think, as a testing ground to eventually, in the future decades, get beyond where we're at. But, we've got $37.5 trillion of debt. The NASA budget is not going to be exploding like it did in the 1960s. So, and then with that new program, either we continue down that path. If Starship starts to work, then competition is a good thing. Maybe we switch to Starship. Maybe we stick with SLS. But that you go to war with the army you have, and the army we have is an SLS that looks like it works well, an Orion capsule that has an iffy heat shield. They got to get that figured out. And the lunar lander program is untenable. We need to get a smaller lunar lander that can take, I don't know, I won't say the number, but it needs to be smaller and faster. And we can't let the Chinese beat us. The Chinese beating us to the moon is a global catastrophe for humanity.
Very well said. And I think you find a lot of sympathizers here. We're going to sympathize ourselves into a quick break, and we'll be right back. So stay with us.
Well, Terry, one of our questions was what your thoughts were on the space race, but I think you've kind of made it clear.
I'm not subtle. I spoke at the White House in 2018, actually, at the National Space Council.
No, well, that's really great. One of the questions I wanted to ask you about kind of your experience as an astronaut, and working on all of these programs, is what advice you would have, not just for like the kids that are out there, like I was, almost 5 decades ago, but next week NASA's unveiling a new crew of astronauts. It's going to be I was looking at the dates, the first class to officially be, announced since NASA has returned to the moon with the Artemis 1 mission, because the one before that was in 2021. And I'm curious, based on your experience and kind of where you think NASA needs to go, or the country needs to go, what advice you would have to give a newly minted astronaut, we should say, as they're just at the start of that career, to keep in mind going forward, because I imagine the weight to fly is just one part of it, right? So
it is. So advice to people in general, the one piece of advice I give kids, I give adults, is don't tell yourself no. And I tell the story about, I was at test pilot school, and NASA said they're going to have this astronaut class. And of course I wanted to be an astronaut. And so pretty much everybody at Edwards as test pilots or flight test engineers wants to be astronauts. But a lot of my classmates didn't apply because we were still students. But I hadn't even graduated yet, and I didn't have any experience. And they all assured me that I had no chance of getting picked. And long story short, I got picked. I was the youngest pilot. I was very, very fortunate, very blessed to get selected. But the bottom line is I didn't tell myself no. I put my name in the hat and I went for it. So I think for anybody that might be thinking they want to be an astronaut, or they want to be a doctor, or they want to be a CEO, whatever it is you want to do, the first step is don't tell yourself no. And then you got to do a lot of work to figure out all the other dots you have to connect. But that first step is very important. As far as advice for the new astronauts, be patient during my era, because NASA had hired too many astronauts. I think there was 150 of us when I got to the astronaut office. And then there was a problem on STS-99 with Columbia. And then there was the Columbia accident in 2003. And then the bosses decided that space station was too complicated. They wouldn't fly rookies. So everybody in that era had to wait between 8 and 12 years to fly. It was painful.
Yeah.
But it was worth it, man. It was worth it. So I would tell the new, the space station missions are shrinking. There's going to be one less astronaut flying every year. They're basically not doing science, or not doing very much science. It's a tragedy what the damage that this administration has done to science. Even if Congress restores the budget, that's already baked in. They're already laying people off. They're already canceling missions. So these new astronauts might need to wait. If the CLDP, the commercial LEO space station program doesn't happen, there's not going to be a lot of flights to the moon. I mean, those seats are going to be few and far between. So
yeah,
be patient. It's worth it. When you see the beautiful planet, it is life-changing.
Where were you when you got that phone call after you applied and got accepted? Where they're like, hey, you know what, Terry, come fly with us.
I had just flown an F-16 test mission, and everybody knew. And we had been waiting for months. We had to wait until the service module launched. Remember, the F-2B launched in 98, and then the Russians were late. The service module finally launched, a module of the space station, in July of 2000. And I was sitting there debriefing the mission, and you knew if you got a call from Charlie Precourt, who was the chief astronaut, that you got picked. And you knew if you got a call from Dwayne or Teresa, the HR people, you didn't get picked. So there was this, the phone rings and I pick it up and it was Charlie Precourt. He's like, "Hey, Terry, how's it going?" And I turned red. I'm like, my face is red right now. I started turning red like this. And he's like, "Do you still want to move to Houston?" And I was like, "Let me think about it." Yes. And he's like, "Well, don't tell anybody. Congress has to approve it, but congratulations, blah, blah, blah." And I just but he said, "Don't tell anybody." And I'm surrounded with a room full of engineers. I'm like, "Okay, bye." And they're like, "What'd they say? What'd they say?" And I was like, "Nothing." And then 1 minute later, the loudspeaker comes on, congratulations party for Captain Virts at whatever time. So anyway, that's how I found out. It was pretty cool.
Wow. That's awesome.
And then I flew 10 years later.
Yeah.
But that was okay. It was well worth it.
But you're in a virtual room with a couple of guys that have wasted a lot of years not getting that far. So
you guys need to start a hedge fund, and then you can get
Terry studied mathematics in college, which means he passed differential equations, Rod. So
we studied mathematics. We just didn't excel in it. I wanted to step back the China thing for a second, because we talk about that fairly often on the show, mostly because I get into my first space age spawned rants. But, like that first space age, because people will ask us, well, does it really matter? And as I have said before, it might not matter that much, except in the first Trump administration, when we started Artemis, we, being the administration, said, we're going back to the moon and we're going to do it before anybody else. And we're going to this and we're going to that. So we kind of threw down the gauntlet, as Kennedy did in 61. So now we're in this position of, had we not said that and China went and did their land grab and come home mission, to be like, oh, good for you. We're going back to stay. But we're kind of in a different situation here where at least I feel like the geopolitical considerations are almost the biggest ones. There's economic and technological and all that, but the perception of us as failing to innovate on something that we've already accomplished and failing to lead in that area and having all this financial confusion when the Chinese just, they just pour money into their program in a metered way for decades at a time. There's a lot of, I wouldn't call them non-aligned nations in this particular time period, but for instance, I was in Ecuador a couple of years ago, and there was this massive freeway construction thing going on, and it was the Chinese who would come in and said, if you sell us your oil for the next 30 years at today's rate, we'll build you all this infrastructure. And they went, great. So China's making a lot of inroads in infrastructure. I mean, from your perch, how does this matter and why does this matter?
Yeah. We need another hour podcast to talk about.
Yes, we do. And we'd welcome you back.
Yeah. Well, the geopolitical implications are huge. In America, honestly, there probably wouldn't be that much fuss about it. If you're in your, whatever ecosystem you're in is the news you're going to get, and people here wouldn't care about it. But like I said, around the world, the entire rest of the world would pivot to looking at America, like we're the number one, and they would start looking at China like they're number one. And that's going to hurt. That's going to affect jobs in Texas. Like that's going to affect Texas workers. So it matters to me. The shift that's happened in the last decade, but especially in the last, since January 20th, is profoundly terrible for America. The Japanese don't trust us. The Koreans don't trust us. Europe certainly doesn't trust us. The president of the United States had our military on their knees rolling out a red carpet for Vladimir Putin. We should have arrested him and thrown him in jail and let the Ukrainians guard him. The man is a war criminal. He is a threat to global peace. If Ukraine wins this war, this will be the last battle of World War III. If Ukraine loses this war against Russia, it's the first battle of World War III. And we need to be looking at it with that seriousness. The president of the United States is running around with this picture that Putin sent him of the two of them holding hands and frolicking in Alaska. He's like a teenager at a Taylor Swift concert that got a signed picture of Taylor Swift. That's the way Trump treats this war criminal. Russia's been sending armed drones into NATO airspace that NATO aircraft had to shoot down. A few hours ago, they just sent 3 MiG-31s into NATO airspace over Estonia. And we're not responding. So we're drawing new lines in the sand, and that line is moving in the wrong direction. So the geopolitical situation today is horrendous because of this administration. We can talk about corruption too. I'd love to talk about corruption. That's another thing. But the Chinese beating us back to the moon, I feel, would be the nail in the coffin of Pax Americana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's not let that happen.
Big sigh.
Let's slap ourselves in the face, throw some cold water, and get back to work. And let's go to war with the army we have. We have SLS. We need a smaller lunar lander. And let's get there first. And not just to go plant a flag. Let's start exploring the moon. And robots can do a lot of exploration now that they couldn't do in 1969.
Mm.
This is really about, can humans land on other planets? Can humans set up shop on other planets? And the moon is just the first step. Look, I'm a test pilot. They taught us to do a build-up approach. So, you start with the moon, and then maybe Mars is next. Maybe the moon's a Jupiter next. But the moon is a good first step. But let's get off our butts. It's been 20 years of several $1 billion a year, and nobody has even flown. Not one astronaut has flown yet.
All right. Well, let's fly into another break. See what I did there? Let's fly into our last break, and we'll be right back. Tarek, I think it's time for you to get on to Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have so many Star Trek stories. It's crazy.
Well, that's a great segue into it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
There we go.
I was going to say the moons of Jupiter, man. I would love to see that,
Wouldn't that be
except for Europa. Right, Rod? We can't go to Europa.
Do not land there.
So, but since we've kind of pivoted to it, I was really tickled years upon years ago when I was watching the finale of Star Trek Enterprise, and it was like there you were in the end, letting Mike Fink have all the speaking roles. I might add, right? But but still, it was the first time I guess I was a space reporter that I saw astronauts there. I know that it wasn't the first time, but I was really curious about how that happened. I got a picture on line 57, Anthony, of Terry there on the set. But how did that happen? I mean, were you just a lifelong fan and they called you up and they're like, hey, you want to come on? Or did you have to lobby to get on? Or what was the deal there?
Yeah. So Spanky, Mike Fink, got paid twice. He had speaking roles. He got twice my rate.
That's right.
2 times 0. So there you go. It was a decade. If you Googled me, the only thing that came up was that I was on Star Trek Enterprise. It wasn't that I was an astronaut or anything. So Mike, when you're in space, you get to pick who you do events with. You can do Skypes with famous people. I did the cast of The Middle, this funny sitcom called The Middle. Mm-hmm. I had JJ Watt. I did a thing with JJ Watt. That was cool. And Spanky did Scott Bakula, who was the captain of Star Trek Enterprise.
That. Yeah.
He was the star. And so, and I was assigned to help Mike out. I was a rookie. And so I kind of helped him during his mission, Expedition 9. And after that flight, and I'm a pilot, he's a mission specialist. So we flew out to LA, did some post-flight work at Boeing. And then they were like, hey, come on out. We'll get you we'll do a cameo. And so we met Scott, and it was the last episode. So they had the original Star Trek, the second Star Trek that was very famous. I forgot what it.
Next Generation.
The Next Generation. Yeah.
Next Generation. All those guys were there. It was so cool. We had In-N-Out Burger. We ate with all those people, and they were trying to get me on. We were on set for like 10 hours. It was painful.
Wow.
And finally, the producer was super cranky. He's like, I think find us soon. So they let me. I got this 3-second cameo at the last second. And when we flew out there, it was funny. We were in Hollywood. We had some diner for breakfast, wearing our NASA suits. The blue suit, the flight suit, and the waitress comes up and she's like, "Oh, are you guys astronauts?" And I said, "No, but I play one on TV." He was like, "Oh, okay." And she it was not a big deal. We're in Hollywood. She just thought,
right.
So
that's another
I've
actor.
ever used that line, and it worked.
It's interesting because it's a very select club of astronauts who have been on Star Trek. Mae Jemison was
That's
also had a cameo, and there's a small select club of astronauts who have become senators as well. So you could cross both clubs there, and you need a secret handshake,
Wow.
Terry, right?
That's probably an N of 1. I'll probably be the only one. I don't know if John Glenn was ever on Star Trek or if Mark Kelly was, or Harrison Schmitt, I think, was also a senator. Yeah.
I don't think any of them, now that I think of it, but you may also need a decoder ring. I do have a quick
Swagger, but he
question.
didn't get the service. Right.
I do have a quick question about your time with the Next Gen crew. Did Jonathan Frakes come over and yank on your hair, as he is known to do?
Nobody did. We talked, it was just fun. We were talking, and Scott and I are roughly the same age. At the time, I was coaching Little League. I coached my kids, boys and girls, all different sports. So we basically talked about Little League for 9-year-olds. It was a lot of fun.
So the guy who played number one on Next Generation, when he's in a small setting, likes to go around to all the guys and tug their hair and say, "You wearing a rug like Shatner? You wearing a rug like Shatner?" It's kind of it hurts actually when he did that.
There's so many Star Trek things. I went on this great white shark boat in Mexico, and Gene Roddenberry's son, was on the boat just randomly. I didn't know it, so I got to know him. I talked to Mr. Shatner after he did his Jeff Bezos, space tourist flight. I talked to him briefly about that. When they did, these new movies came out with Chris Pine in 2009. I helped make like the bonus DVD for the box set. So I did all that content for that when I was an active astronaut. So I have all these weird, and then of course the biggest one is when Mr. Spock died, when Leonard Nimoy passed away. I did the Vulcan salute in the cupola,
which is on line 56.
It's very popular. You can find it. And it was like NASA's most popular tweet up to that date or something. No one knew it was me. It was just because everybody loved. There you go. Everybody loved.
Yeah, isn't that great?
But look at that picture. See in between my fingers, that's Long Island, and just that little hook is Cape Cod. And Leonard Nimoy was from Boston.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea. I was doing, it was the third EVA in a week. We were going out the door the next day. I was EV1. I was the lead spacewalker. So it was so busy. And PAO wanted something. So I got this picture, and it's hard to get your hand and Earth in focus. And it's hard to get your hand and Earth exposed the same. So anyway, so we got it done. And I just randomly, it was I'd rather be lucky than good, as we used to say in the F6. No, that was definitely a case of getting lucky, but it was, Leonard Nimoy was the best.
Did you watch Star Trek as a kid, Terry? I forgot to even ask that. Is that something that like?
Well, when I was a kid, it was in reruns, so it was before I was born. But like my dad used to watch it, so I would see it. It was kind of scary. I remember like being 5 watching it, and it was pretty scary. All these creatures, but yeah, we watched it. And at the Air Force Academy, ironically, we would use it as like leadership lessons, like how's Kirk leading his crew. So, I don't know.
Now that interests me because, the prime directive was at most a slight inconvenience for him half the time,
right?
And only applied until he found some cute female down there, whether she was in a rubber suit or not.
Right.
And then all bets were off. Even as a kid, I remember thinking, wait a minute, that's not how it's supposed to go. Mr. Spock has a point. But
well, Star Trek was very progressive for the 1960s.
Oh boy, was it? Yeah.
There was a black female in power, and different races were there. Anyway, it was. Oh, and here's another Star Trek. Mr. Sulu.
George Takei. Mm-hmm.
I was at this event at the Kennedy Space Center. We got to talking, and do we have time for a long story?
Yeah.
Before my launch in Russia, we had this press conference, and I was there with Samantha Cristoforetti, who's an amazing astronaut. And they asked her what it was like to be launching with such strong and handsome men. And I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Literally, this is the best thing that's, because I knew she would just get really mad about it. So whenever I get a chance, if Samantha's doing a talk or something, I always plant that question in the audience, and somebody has to ask her, what was it like to be with such good looking guys? Just to give her a hard time. And I had George Takei film a video, and like, Samantha, what was it like to be up there? Anyway, so that was another random Star Trek connection that I ran into George Takei in the Hilton lobby, and we started talking, and I was like, George, you got to do this video for me.
Oh, that's fun.
Also, Samantha Cristoforetti dressed like Captain Janeway on the International Space Station with coffee too. So it was, we're all full of Star Trek references.
Samantha's a big science fiction fan. She was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was her thing, and so she's a big science fiction fan. I'm reading Isaac Asimov Foundation right now, actually.
Oh wow! I have to read that. I've never finished it, so I better get
I read
it.
Foundation twice. I remember as a kid, I was probably 10 or something. I thought, this is kind of puzzling. As an adult, I reread it and said, oh, I get it. He just doesn't like human beings very much. He's kind of like, if you watch any Arthur C. Clarke movie, especially as they went along, they were very much a cold touch. But I digress. Tarek, you've got one more question, I think.
I just have one last question, because you kind of touched on it when we were talking about Leonard Nimoy and just being like on the space station. And you mentioned that you were in that week of 3 spacewalks in 2014 and 2015. And I thought I would ask, just because this year in November, which is not very long from when we're recording this, it will mark the 25th year of continuous human habitation in space. There are people out of college now who have grown up and gone all through academic life with their never living in an era where there wasn't somebody in space.
Right.
And I'm and I'm curious what you see as someone that not only has worked in part of the program, but has lived up there, done the science, done the maintenance work. What you feel has been, one of the biggest lessons or roles the International Space Station has played in our Earth observation, in our exploration of space, kind of the gamut there, the biggest contribution that it has.
Well, for the exploration of space, I think it's shown that people can live and work in space for a long period of time. They did a X-ray before I launched, and 200 days later after I got back, and I had lost 0% of my bone density, and I did 20.
0? Wow.
It was rare. Most people lose some. I was very religious about doing my 2.5 hours of exercise every day. So people can live and work in space in weightlessness, not indefinitely. The radiation we haven't solved as we're looking at my face now. But the weightlessness, we've solved that. The engineering challenges of building something complicated and operating it, we're pretty darn good at that with the ISS. The science has been prolific. There's been thousands of PhD level papers written from ISS science. The international relations aspect, I think, was the most important. We had, very different countries came together and have worked to keep this program going. I think in some ways there's been this naivete that if we can work together, that'll make, then we won't have war on Earth. Obviously, that hasn't worked with Russia. 3 of the cosmonauts I was with on the space station have come, and several others that I wasn't with, have come back to Earth, joined Putin's political party. Many of them are supporting the war in Ukraine. So that's been like the most disappointing thing in my professional career, is to see these men and women who know better do the wrong thing and support Putin. So there's been pluses and minuses there, but we worked with Japan, we worked with Europe, and those have been great relationships. So there's a lot of benefits to ISS, and it was an honor of a lifetime to be a very, very small part of it.
Well, this has been a real pleasure having you here, and I want to thank you for joining us today for the episode number 178 that we like to call Tell It to the Mountain. Terry, where's the best place to keep current with your work? I know terryvirts.com is right. Our number one stop. Anywhere else we should be looking?
Sure. Yeah, the website is great. We're looking for support if in a political campaign. You can sign up to volunteer there. Also, my social media is Astro Terry or Astro_Terry, depending on which platform you're on. Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. We're on all the above. So follow the things I'm doing. Like I said, I was in Fort Worth last night, 10 hours of driving yesterday, and going somewhere different in the state constantly. So keep up with me on social media and the website, terryvirts.com.
Well, and we appreciate you being a road warrior today to join us here. Which was probably quite a drill.
It was a big inconvenience to Terry, but thank you so much for coming.
That forced us to drive home last night, which was great, actually.
Okay, good.
We got a ton of, we brainstormed all this First Amendment disaster with Jimmy Kimmel, so we got a lot of content at midnight last night on Interstate 45 here in Texas. That was good.
Cool. Tarek, where can we keep up with your digital tomfoolery?
Well, it's not astronaut level service, but this weekend I am taking my Girl Scout troop out camping, so there is that, and then I'll be in your neck of the woods, Terry. Very excited to see the announcement next week of the new astronauts on Monday, and our big upfronts on Artemis too. So hopefully next week dear listeners, we'll have an Artemis 2 centric episode. We'll talk about all that fun stuff. So
That'll be awesome.
And of course, you can always find me at pilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com, or perhaps most importantly, nss.org for the National Space Society, of which Terry is a card-carrying member, I think.
It was awesome being on with you guys. This was great.
We really appreciate it. Remember, everybody, you can drop us a line at twit@twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, and ideas and notions, and I or we will answer each and every email because we love you. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We'll take whatever kind of reviews they supply, whether it's thumbs in the air or winks or kisses or whatever. Just make sure you give us as many as you can because we're counting on you. We're also counting on you to join Club Twit 2025. Besides supporting this show, you'll be supporting the network in general and my ability to keep bringing you great guests and terrible space jokes. So make sure to sign up. It's $10 a month. And I can tell you from, as of yesterday, 69 years of experience on this planet, you're not going to get anything better for $10 a month. Finally, you can follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network at Twit on Twitter and on Facebook at twit.tv on Instagram. And we are available on all social media and other platforms, podcasting platforms. Thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.